All right, second graders, it's time for chapter 3, part 3. In the beginning of this chapter, Mary was an answer backer, or she talks back to her parents, and Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle gave her Penelope the parrot to help with this. But Mrs. O'Toole, who was Mary's mother, wasn't exactly sure that this was working, so she called Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle back. Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle said, "Just remember, Mrs. O'Toole, that this is only the first day with Penelope. Let Mary be with her as much as she wishes. Keep Penelope's cage in the breakfast nook when Mary eats her lunch and her breakfast, and in the dining room at night. Hang her cage in Mary's bedroom when she goes up there to play, and have Penelope sleep in Mary's room. I am sure that you do not have to worry. Penelope has never failed me." Mrs. O'Toole said, "All right, Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle, I'll do just that. Goodbye." Just before dinner, Mrs. O'Toole said to Mary, "Mary, dear, send your little friends home now. It is time for you to set the table." Mary turned to her and began pulling down her mouth and squinting and blinking. But before she could say a word, Penelope yelled out, "Say, who is the boss around here? Who is the boss around here? Who's the boss on me anyway?" Mary's mother quickly put a cloth over her cage, politely asked the children to leave, and Mary to set the table. When Mr. O'Toole came home from the office, she took the cover off again to show him the parrot, and then she hung Penelope in the dining room window. After Mary's dinner, Mary's daddy said, "Up on your toes, Miss Molly O'Toole, and scoot the dishes out to the kitchen." Mary pulled down her mouth, squinted up her eyes, blinked her eyes, but Penelope said, "What am I, a servant? Work, 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 work. What am I, a servant? Say, who's the boss around here?" Mary's daddy laughed so hard, tears ran down his cheeks, but Mary stuck out her tongue at Penelope, who bounced around yelling, "Only snakes stick out their tongues. Only snakes stick out their tongues." Mary pulled her tongue in quickly and shut her lips together tight, but she thought Penelope was horrid. Mrs. O'Toole hung Penelope's cage in Mary's room, and Penelope squawked and made so much noise that Mary finally said, "Oh, be quiet." And Penelope blinked and said, "I'll do it better because I'll do it because I want to, not because you tell me to. I'll do it because I want to, not because you tell me to." Mary flounced into bed and turned off the light. The next morning, Mary was very slow. She could not find one sock, and she couldn't button her dress. And finally, her mother called, "Mary, hurry, dear, breakfast is waiting." Mary pulled down her mouth and squinted up her eyes and said, "Oh, hurry, 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 hurry yourself." Penelope had been preening her tail feathers, but when she heard Mary, she jerked her head up and said, "Oh, hurry, hurry, hurry yourself, Slowpoke. Hurry yourself, Slowpoke. Hurry, Slowpoke. Hurry, Slowpoke. Hurry, Slowpoke. Hurry, hurry, hurry." Mary said crossly, "Oh, be quiet, Penelope." Penelope said, "I'll do it because I want to, not because you tell me to. Say, who's the boss around here? Oh, yeah? Oh, yeah? Oh, yeah?" Mary ran downstairs and said to breakfast, leaving Penelope still shouting. But Mrs. O'Toole ran upstairs and got Penelope and hung the cage by the window. When the children called for Mary, and Mrs. O'Toole said, "Hurry, dear, you'll make your friends late for school." Mary pulled down her mouth and squinted her eyes and blinked before she could say a word. Penelope squawked, "I'm the one who's eating this breakfast, madam." "Hurry, hurry, hurry, that's all I hear. Hurry yourself, Slowpoke." Mary was ashamed to look at her mother, so she rushed off without kissing her goodbye. Penelope yelled after her, "Hurry, Slowpoke, bell's ringing." When Mary came home from school that afternoon, she kissed her mother and said, "Mother, I apologized to Mrs. Crabtree today, and she said that next week I may be the monitor for the scissors." Penelope yelled, "Who said so? Who said so? Who said so? Who's the boss? Who's the boss?" Mary turned to Penelope and said, "You are a very rude bird. If you don't hush right now, I'll put a cloth over your cage." Penelope blinked and said, "Hush, hush, hush." That's all I hear. I'll do it because I want to, but not because you tell me to. I'll do it because I want to, but not because you tell me to. Who's a boss around here anyway? Mary's mother said, I'm the boss, and I think it is time for you to go home, Penelope. Mary would like to return Penelope to Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle. Mary said, Oh, yes, mother. And may I stay and play? Mrs. O'Toole said, I think you'd better come home and practice. Your music lesson is tomorrow, you know. Mary started to draw down her mouth, squint up her eyes, and blink, but suddenly she looked at Penelope, and so she turned her mouth up, opened her eyes, and smiled. She said, All right, mother, I'll come right home after I return that rude Penelope. And that is how the answer backer cure worked. All right, we'll see you next time for the next cure Mrs. Piggle-Wiggle has for a naughty child.